Good morning. Thank you all for joining the session with B.NET, the first virtual meetup that we have tried. Today's session, the first session is about durable functions. And myself, I am Amrish, and I am working as a technical architect in JCPenney. And I have been with B.NET for the past 7 to 8 years. And that's my Twitter handle at the rate Amrish Chris. So if you have any feedback or if you have any questions, even after the session, you can always reach out to me using the Twitter handle. And Swami was also sharing the Facebook group and also the meetup group. So I'm also available there. So you can always reach out to me through other forums. So a bit of agenda here. So first we will see what's serverless in Azure, and we will also see a touch about Azure Functions because Azure Functions is one of the predominantly used features of serverless. And what we can do is today's problem is about durable functions, right? We are here to kind of learn what durable functions are. So what we can do is we will pick a simple problem, kind of a workflow, and let's see how do we use to solve that in previous versions of Azure Functions. And with durable functions coming in, how can we kind of simplify solving that problem, right? So we'll do that. So thereby we will also learn the different components of durable functions and a bit of background like on how it works, and which is also going to let us know like why do we need something like a durable function, right? So we will see what and why part of durable functions over the course. And there is a definitely demo when we talk about durable functions. So there is no demo for the first part where we talk about serverless or Azure Functions, but there is definitely a lot of demo when we come into the main agenda, which is the durable functions. And yeah, I'm also watching the chat window in my other monitor. So if there is any questions that is coming up, I can quickly pick it up. But if not, I will let Swami to kind of stop me in between, and we can go over the questions as well. Hope it is all fine.
Yeah, sounds good, Amrish.
Sure. So yeah, we'll get into the session. So first thing is serverless. So before we get into durable functions and functions, I just want to kind of level set the forum with serverless. Or maybe some of us are new to even Azure, so it is always better to kind of level set from the serverless, and we will get into the functions and durable functions part, right? So when we say serverless, like there are probably many definitions that is out there for serverless, but what I felt that can easily relate to most of us is we will see from two perspectives. So one is cost. So when we say about Azure or any cloud provider, right? So first thing that we need to keep in mind, or one of the main thing that we need to keep in mind is the cost. So we could have a better design and all that. So far, when we kind of do some non-cloud kind of a design, we never worried about the cost, right? Because almost all of our infrastructure is already in our data center or in our store servers or something, right? So, but what happens is, in case of cloud, we need to definitely keep cost in mind. And serverless is one of the features that cloud providers provide, where we can drastically bring down the cost. Right. And if I have to kind of example relate to a typical example, what people usually relate it to something like electricity, right? So we all kind of have electricity always available to us at our home. But what we used to pay every month is something that what we use for. So currently, I think we are all working from home. So probably this month electricity bill is more because we have consumed a lot of appliances and a lot of power is running out as at home. But in previous months or in any other month, if you don't use much of the electrical appliances or so, right, you probably end up paying less to the electricity board. So that is something similar. So even cloud is also associated with cost. So if I have to bring down my cost, if my computations is running in cloud, how can I bring down that cost? So serverless is one way where we can, which is kind of help you to provide or bring down the cost. And the second perspective is from the developer's point of view, right? So if I'm a developer and if I have to kind of write some business logic, I really don't have to worry about what is my infrastructure or what is kind of VM that is provisioned out there, or which is OS where I'm going to run all my systems, right? So this is something that we need not think about as a developer. And basically, serverless is an abstraction on infrastructure, I would say, and it is going to let you. So all as a developer, I need to just worry about my business logic, and I going to deploy into cloud provider like Azure, and rest all is taken care by the cloud provider itself. Like for example, I could write a simple function like calculate sum or calculate order total or something, and I can deploy it Azure. And based on the work demand that comes, right, if in some months or some days of the week, if the demand is huge, it is automatically scaled out and scaled in. There is no code associated with all that, right? So this is one of the advantage of say serverless compute. And I would say it's more about the mindset, right? It is not a technology or something. It's more about the mindset, like how do we design our application so that it can, so some part of it can run in a serverless way. Right. And when we say Azure serverless, there are quite a lot of components where you could kind of use to have this serverless compute facility. And some of them are Event Grid, where there is a burst of event that is coming into your system. You can always use Event Grid, which is again one way of serverless capacity in Azure. And we have Logic Apps. I'm sorry, was there a question? Right. So people who are not asking any questions, I will request you all to go back and mute, so it is clear. Oh, thank you. So yeah, so we were talking about Logic Apps. So Logic Apps is more like a graphical visual interface tool where you can kind of design your workflows. Some of the samples like the provide Logic Apps provides is like, for example, if I'm having a Twitter account, if I want to know how many followers are there for my Twitter account, and if it crosses a certain point, I want kind of a reminder or kind of an alert for me, right? So all this can be done without zero code. In the sense, you will have a virtual designer in Azure. You can go and design your Logic Apps. And today's discussion is probably about Azure Functions, and definitely Azure Functions is one of the most widely used serverless compute facilities, I would say, for from the developer's point of view. Right. So Azure Functions, usually we call it as FaaS, which stands for Functions as a Service. And what we used to do in the past is we all used to write a big monolith applications, and then we slowly transitioned into SOA based applications, and then came the microservices, right? So we are probably somewhere between microservices and serverless era, I would say. So what is happening is with more functionalities getting added to Azure, like Azure Durable Functions. So there is a lot more capabilities available where we can kind of design our solutions with kind of short-lived functions, right? So it is usually called Azure Functions, and when Azure Functions was introduced, it is predominantly stateless, and it is mostly used in places where we have some integrations with IoT, or some most of the places where you don't need to maintain the state, right? So in those places is where majorly Azure Functions were used. But if you see our normal applications, right, normal application definitely needs state, and there is a lot more computations that we need to do than what is the default Azure Functions was providing to us, right? And yes, I say it is a short-lived. So some of the points that you see below is the characteristics of an Azure function, and it is definitely short-lived. So based on the consumption plan or the premium plan that you have, Azure function can live up to say 5 to 10 minutes. So what it means is the workload is on the developer, so that your Azure function should be deterministic, and it should run in 5 to 10 minutes, and it should kind of go back in the background. And whenever the Azure function is active, say if you have written a function to calculate or to compute a sum of two numbers, probably it is roughly going to take a second or even lesser than that, right? So you will be only charged for how much the time your function was active. Right, you don't get charged. So something, if you have to compare against a VM or something, right? So if you kind of provision a virtual machine in Azure, so what used to happen is, even if nobody is actively using your virtual machine, you will end up paying the cost for that, right? So you will have to pay for the resources that you take. If you have taken a 4 GB virtual machine, you will end up paying whatever the cost for that, right? So that is something not that is something different here. So in Azure Functions, you don't kind of pay up even if you don't use it. So if you have got an Azure function, and if it is deployed in cloud, so if you are getting a request, and if your Azure function is getting triggered, and for how much ever time it runs, you end up paying for that, right? So this is the main advantage where people are kind of now migrating to think most of their workflows into kind of a serverless driven way. And so we all talked about Azure Function. So it's just like another endpoint in Azure, right? So like, how will it get triggered? Like, who is going to call my function? So there are different triggers out there. Some of them, like the most commonly used is HTTP trigger, and we also have some timer-based functions and even grid. So for example, you can write an Azure function and deploy it in cloud, and if you want to kind of schedule it at different time of the day, you can do that. And if you have some queue where your order information, for example, let's take an order queue in kind of an e-commerce application. So if order is reaching my queue, if I want to trigger an email, or if I have to trigger an alert to my backend systems, I can all do that using Azure Functions. So yeah, that is a little bit background about Azure Functions. And so what, as I was already mentioned, right? So we will take a simple use case to understand, and we will build a solution for that during the next 30 to 35 minutes, right? And the use case that I've taken is like booking a vacation. So we all have used some portals like Make My Trip or Redbus. So the use case is if I have to book a vacation, so I will go to some of the sites and I will try to choose a place, and it is going to offer me what is the hotels that is available in that place. And I also want to book a flight ticket. And I also want at the end what is the total that I have incurred through my booking the vacation, right? So this is a simple example. I know most of us seriously wants to go for a vacation right now, but that is obviously not going to happen near time. So let's see. We will at least see in B.NET demo. We'll book a vacation to the place that where we wanted to go, and see if we can do that in a simple way using Azure Durable Functions. So yeah, I think this workflow is clear. Maybe if I want to just say, it is a simple use case of booking a vacation, and I also want to book an hotel and a flight, and at the end I also want to see how much is the total price that I've incurred by booking an hotel and flight. Right. So if this is a problem that we used to have, right, and this is a similar workflows you might have in our applications. But if I have to solve this problem using Azure Functions, one of the way that we could do is something in the right that I've showed, right. This is may be right, may not be right, but let's just see how we can do it using the Azure Functions that we have. So whenever any vacation event is coming, so whenever user is clicking, I want to book a vacation to so and so place, maybe we can put that into an event grid, and that is going to trigger an Azure function, which is called as book hotel, because that is the first workflow that we have. And let us assume this function book hotel is going to talk to some kind of providers and book the hotel for us, and is going to get the final price. And the final price is a state, right? So since Azure functions are stateless, I want to maintain this state, and let's take something like a Cosmos DB to want to kind of store the total. And again, yeah, if Cosmos DB has got some total for some instance, and I want to trigger another as Azure function, which can probably go back and book the flight ticket for us. And again, let us assume that booking flight ticket is also successful. And if it is going to come back with the price of how much the booking flight has costed me, I will go back and update Azure Cosmos DB again, update the total. And then once Azure Cosmos DB has got the total, I would probably send an event to somebody who's watching for that and update back my application, or update back whoever is called the book vacation event, right? So this is a sample workflow, but if you see, there are a lot of handshakes and there are a lot of components that we will have to use. When I say a lot of components, if you see, there is an Azure function, there is some DB involved to maintain my state, and there are obviously some kind of a queue system involved to kind of maintain, and even grid is involved and all that stuff, right? So there are pretty much a lot of handshake is happening for even a simple workflow, right? And whatnot. So if you also understand all these functions runs in a distributed environment, right? Maybe what I say distributed, right? So we have got functions. When I kind of deploy my function, there is no guarantee this function is always going to run in the same virtual machine. Right. So and with all that, right, what also we have is we have always problem with network, and we have always problem with failures and error cases, right? What if there is some error in me booking the flight ticket, and how am I going to capture that? So if you add all those kind of business use cases into this workflow, this is really going to get tedious and complex for even a simple workflow that we see. But typically, if you see our business workflows, right? So what I'm trying to say is for any kind of workflows where we need to maintain the state, Azure function was definitely not the answer, right? And maybe that is the reason we have got something like durable functions, which is going to maintain the state, and it's going to orchestrate the activity across all the Azure functions, which is what we are going to see. And there are many workflows that we have, right? What we saw is a simple example, but if you see in a typical business line of applications that we write day in, day out, there are probably many different workflows that we could come across. So this slide is more about the patterns that we have, which we could see in a typical enterprise applications, right? So the one example that we currently saw is all about function chaining. So we have got function one, something like a book hotel that we just saw, which is going to kind of get as an output, and we want to kind of store that. And the output of the function one has to be passed as an input to another function, something like a booking flight or a compute total. So this is a pattern, we call it as function chaining, where one function has to trigger another function, and and it goes on, right, indefinite. And we have another pattern called fan out and fan in. So let us take another example to understand this pattern, right? So assume we have got say a directory of say 1,000 files, and I'm getting a request. So say I have to read all these files, and at the end I have to compute how much of the bytes that's been totally read. Right. So we will get a function which is going to get a directory name as an input, and once the directory name as an come as an input, we want to span probably 1,000 tasks in parallel, and let each of these tasks or let each of these function can go and read individual file. And once all these functions have all completed, I want to come back to my primary function and let me know like how much of byte has been read in each of these individual functions. Right. So this is a similar example. Basically, I'm just trying to tell an example, but you can relate to anything that you want to run in parallel, right? Like in order-based systems, I want to trigger an order. I want to send an email to a customer. At the same time, I have to update my inventory. So all these tasks, right? So these can be run in parallel. So in those cases, we can also try to use some of these workflows using durable functions. Right, and this is an interesting workflow, right? Because if you see in a distributed system, it is pretty much simple to kind of run multiple tasks in parallel. But what is more difficult is aggregating the results of all these tasks, right? It is more difficult in a distributed system, but these workflows are possible with durable functions, and we could see how can we solve this problem. And we have a typical problem like async HTTP API. So this is a pattern name. Assume you all have a web applications and we want to trigger some work in a background, which can probably take like running a report, right? So as a customer or as an admin, I want to run a report of how much of orders that has happened in the past 1 week or 1 month. So if I have to kind of if I have to trigger this event from my web application, what I could do is I can trigger an Azure durable functions in the background, which can probably run for say more than 5 to 10 minutes or even a day or week, and it can generate the report. And while it is generating, we will also have an endpoint exposed to us through which we can get the status saying if the report generation is completed or not. So if the status says if it is completed, then we can go and take necessary actions in the UI. So this is possible, and if you see the monitor is just a process, a simple update on the previous workflow. So in the previous workflow, we were seeing like there is an endpoint to kind of get the status if my work is completed or not. So it's more like polling, right? So we will have an Azure functions running, and there is a need that if you want to poll whether that function is completed or not, we can use async HTTP API pattern. But if in other way, if you want, let your system know that once I've completed, I don't want to follow the polling pattern. Instead, I want to let the caller know that I've completed. Then we can go for something like a monitor pattern. We also have aggregator, so we can think of a use case like IoT devices, right, which is going to give the burst of events is going to come right at a given second. And if you want somebody to kind of be watchful of all these events and kind of do some aggregation of all their output, we can use this pattern too. And in most of our workflow, sometimes we also need some kind of manual interventions, right? So if you see all the previous workflow, there is nothing called manual workflow coming in, right? For example, we can say we can have an hiring system, right? So HR systems, right? So whenever any person has joined, and if I have to take my directors or senior directors approval for him to kind of release the offer letter, there is a manual intervention required, right? I have to wait for my director's approval to kind of go back and approve the hiring process, right? So if there is any manual intervention required, even those problems can be solved using Azure functions now. And how is it going to work is we can probably send an email, and that email approval is going to kind of trigger back a logic app flow, which can in turn trigger an Azure function and can kind of complete the process. And we can also have timer based systems in this. Like I have sent an approval, but what if this approval is not approved in a given time, right? If it is expired, then if you want to do something else, like send a workflow or send an email to somebody else, we can always do that, like an escalation. So all these kind of patterns we see in our typical business line of apps, right? And this is all the pattern that the Microsoft has kind of put up a documentation for durable functions. But definitely this is not limited, right? So when all these patterns are kind of combined together, they can create a powerful workflow. So pretty much anything that you have in your work, pretty much anything that you have in your business workflow can now be solved using Azure functions through durable functions, obviously. So I'll just take a pause and let me see if there is any questions that has come up in the chat.
Yes, there was one question about what is the difference between Azure function and Azure durable function. Maybe if you could little bit elaborate on that, that'll be helpful, Amrish.
Sure. Yeah. Right. So what we saw with Azure Functions, right? So let me go back to the slide. We were just showing Azure Functions, right? So if you see Azure Functions primarily stateless, right? So I was also calling out an example. Stateless is good, but it is not going to solve all the problem that we have, right? We definitely need state as part of our workflow, like as part of our computations. And how can serverless help you to solve that stateful problem? So that is where Azure Durable Functions have come, and the name called durable because it is going to maintain the state for us. I can let you show the next part of the demo. Is all about durable function. So we will go and see how durable function is going to help us maintain the state, and how can we achieve all these workflows. So the patterns that I've put here, right? So these patterns are not solvable using Azure functions, right? Because it is solvable, but it is going to be so much tedious. We need so much of what to say, so much of capacities from Azure that is needed to solve all these workflows just by using Azure functions. But all these patterns are now easily solved using durable functions. You don't have to kind of have any other integrations with any other systems in Azure to solve all these workflows. It is all available to you through one function app. Like how you used to write Azure functions, you can now write one function app which is going to contain durable functions, and you can do pretty much of all the workflows just we saw now. I hope that is clear, but this the demo is also going to help us more to understand the differences. And if not, we can definitely come back to that question at the end of the session too. So any other question we have before we kind of get into the other one? Yeah, there is a question on scalability part. Yes, we will come and touch up that. And thanks, Swami, you have already answered that. Yeah, thank you. So yeah. Right. So durable functions. So we've come into that durable function. So the one of the simple definition that I could say is it's going to provide an orchestration of Azure functions. So there are so much of so it is an extension on top of Azure functions, and it is definitely stateless, whereas durable function can retain the state. So that is one of the differences that we have already seen. And in case of Azure functions, it was definitely not a long running operations, right? So we had a limitation of 5 or 10 minutes based on the consumption or the premium plans. But in case of durable functions, you can have long running Azure functions running out there as a single orchestration unit, right? So you can run even for a day or a month or more than that. And what is more interesting is it can coordinate between different Azure functions, and it can coordinate and solve much of the problems that we saw using the workflows that we just saw. And it is open source, so it is all built on a framework called Durable Task, and it is also built on top of Azure functions, and it is open source, and it is available in many different languages that we may think of, like C#, Python, JavaScript. And what is also going to happen is that it is all code driven, right? So there is no GUI to maintain the state, or no JSON format specifications and all. You can write general general C# code to maintain the state and to kind of call and maintain this orchestration, right? And what it also needs is Azure storage. So I've just called it out, but as a developer, we need not think much about the usage of Azure storage in the background, but durable functions definitely uses Azure storage at the background to kind of maintain its state. So we will come into the components of durable functions, right? So pretty much I would say there are three main components of a durable function. And the first component we could see today is something called activity function. So activity function is basically called a unit of work in case of durable function. So in our typical example, we saw like book hotel, book flight, or compute total. So if you see, these are individual activity that I want to do in my workflow, right? So these individual work unit, I would say, can be called as an activity function. So where activity function just looks like this, just put a code snippet. So basically it is a normal function. So if you have worked on Azure function, this is no different than that. It is going to have something called function name called book hotel. That is the first line in the snippet. And if you see the parameters that is going to take is trigger called activity trigger. So that is a binding parameter that we say. So it has got a new trigger called activity trigger, just to let the function know that it is of type activity function. And then it can take a parameter like string hotel name. And internally, this activity function is something similar to our Azure functions that we used to write earlier. It can go and do a task, or probably in the simple example, I have just written some value. But in ideal world, what we will do is we will call some API and passing this hotel name and kind of get the response and all that stuff, right? So this being a sample, I've just not explained all that. But at the end of the day, it is just going to have a trigger, activity trigger as its binding attribute to let that know that it's an activity function. And we have some okay. When I was talking about an example about solving that workflow using durable function, right? So we were thinking we should have some even grade, and we have got function 1, function F2, and all, right? So like if you think of that, something was missing, right? What if we have somebody who can coordinate across all of these tasks? We need somebody who can coordinate if book hotel is successful or not, or we need to somebody to maintain how much of a cost book hotel activity function returned. And we also need to coordinate if book flight is successful or not. Basically, an orchestrator function is somebody who is going to kind of coordinate the activity that is happening across all these individual activity functions. So again, I've put a snippet here. So it is again a function. So the first line is a function name, book vacation, which is the name of the orchestrator function. And it is also going to have another binding attribute called orchestration trigger. And So what this orchestration function going to do is he's going to maintain in which of the order that I need to call my activity functions. Like if I have to call book hotel and book flight ticket in parallel, or do I need to wait until the book hotel is completed? And basically, if I have to kind of aggregate the total of book hotel and book flight ticket, all these can be done inside an orchestration function. So in other words, for a developer, if you want to say it right, for an orchestration function, it's not going to contain much of the business logic, right? So all of our business logic of booking the hotel and booking the flight ticket gets into the activity function, and orchestrator function as main activity is to kind of maintain in the order on all of these functions, or individual unit of functions are called. So there is no business logic here other than a minor logic of computing the total in our case, right? But otherwise, all it is going to maintain is how am I calling my activity functions, and if it is all successful or not. So those kind of error handling is what we usually do within an orchestrator function. And again, this guy can take an input and he's going to also, so if you see context, context is basically the durable context that this orchestration function is receiving, and almost all the actions that we do within an orchestrator function is using the context. And we can call another activity function using call activity async, and that's a method where we can pass an activity function as an parameter, and also the function arguments that it can take. In our case, we are passing the hotel name to a book hotel function. So the third function is something called client function. So we have seen orchestration function, which is going to maintain the sequence in which my activity functions are called. But somebody needs to even call the orchestrator function, like what is my entry point to an orchestrator function. So that is something called client function. So this client function is again similar to the Azure function, so where it has got its own HTTP trigger, or it could be any other trigger that we have seen with a normal Azure function. Could be an event trigger, could be a queue trigger. So once if you get an HTTP trigger, once this function is called, this guy internally is going to call or trigger the orchestrator function. So for example, there is a code snippet there. So we are going to have something called HTTP trigger, and internally it is going to have something called durable client as a binding attribute. And this durable client binding attribute is going to call the orchestrator function. Basically, this is a starting point from where you can begin the orchestration, right? And the response type of this is something called the status of the orchestrator function, right? So one thing we have to understand is the orchestrator function or the durable function is a long running operation, right? It is, we cannot expect an output immediately. So for example, the book flight or book hotel can take probably some a lot of time to come back and complete, right? So the output of this client function is more or less like a status endpoint where you can go back and check if my orchestration is completed or not. And if it is completed, it is also going to get as the output. So the flow is something like this. So we call, as a client application, we call the starter function or the client function, and which is internally going to call my orchestrator function. And within the orchestration function, we have to maintain the state and the order on which we are calling one or more activity function. So I will just quickly show a demo, like we can use Visual Studio Code to kind of have a demo for this. So all right, so I have simply started demo. It's basically a folder that I have got in Visual Studio Code, and prerequisites, as I would say, is you should also have something called Azure Storage Emulator. As we have seen in the previous slide, right? Durable function uses the Azure storage or the blob storage to maintain the state internally. So if I have to run all my Azure function locally, I have to use my local storage emulator. So Azure local storage emulator is again a standalone installable. It is available and you can download and install in your machine. So that is one thing. And another thing, I can also have it in my local install is something called Azure Storage Explorer. So again, Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer, this is a standalone utility that is available. You can download and install in your machine. And this is basically going to let you explore what is there in the Azure portal, right? So if you have got your active subscription and if you've got something available in your blob storage or in a table storage, you can quickly view what is out there. And it is also going to kind of let you know what is there in your local developer storage account. So if you are doing active development, I would encourage you all use Azure Storage Explorer to see how it is all coming up. And once we are done with our development, we can port it to the Azure portal. So these two things are there. So Azure Storage Explorer and Azure Storage Emulator. And again, you can download from Microsoft and you can install as a standalone package. And there are some extensions also available in Visual Studio Code. VS Code, like we have got Azure Storage Explorer extensions, we can go back and install that too. Once that. So there are some extensions again available in VS Code where we can create Azure functions right from the VS Code. We don't even need Visual Studio, or we don't even need Azure Portal to kind of learn and do all our development tasks with Azure functions. So I've installed Azure functions, which is again an extension from VS Code. So I'm getting these options to create a project. So let me go and click it. And it is going to ask me select the folder where you want to create your function project. So as you all see, I have already created the folder. Let me go and select the folder that I want to create. And it is also asking the language. So you can see what is the language support that we currently have. So C#, JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, and Java. And I'm going to use C#. So it is going to select the template. And if you have created Azure function, this is not something new, right? So this is the same workflow that we have. But if you see, there is a new template got added now, which is called durable functions orchestration. So whatever you see below, HTTP trigger, blob trigger, until the timer trigger, this is something that is existing already. This is not new. But the durable function orchestration is something that the template that we can use now to see what is durable functions and the workflows. So it is asking me to get a name for that. So let me go and click some name, b.NET. More durable functions. And it's also asking me a namespace. Like it is going to create a C# project and it's just asking me what is the namespace for that. So this is a dialog that you get, right? So in order to debug, you must select a storage account for the internal use, right? So we need a storage account because by default this durable function needs the storage account to kind of maintain the state. So I'm going to say use local emulator. Since I have already installed and I'm already running it. So if you see, so this is my local storage emulator, which has already been up and running. So it is going to use this storage as the backend, and it is going to trigger get started with this function. All right, so we have got our first project here. So on the left side, if you see, we will just quickly go through what is the different content of it, right? So it is having local settings.json. This is no different than an Azure function. So it is going to let you know what is the local attributes that we want to use, what kind of storage that we want to connect. So if you really wanted to connect some dev instance, you can give that connection string here. And again, the host.json is about where is the function getting hosted, right? So it is definitely going to use the local host. And if I have to kind of use a different port, I can go and give all those settings here. And there is some integrations that is already available with application insights and integrations with authentication and all that. So if you have all that, we can go back and explore and put those settings in host.json. And this is a CS proj that it has created, and it is of type Azure Functions, and it is by default added to two NuGet packages for us, right? So one is the SDK functions because it is all on top of functions that we use, and we also saw that it is also going to use something called internally durable task, which is again an extension on top of web jobs. So these are some of the project thing, and if you come to the code. So we have got, let me go to the client starter function, right? So we saw the client starter function, right? So this is example for HTTP start or the client function that you would say. And it is having something called a durable client as an attribute. So what it means is it is a starter function. So if you have this binding attribute, that is going to define this function as a starter function. And I'm going to call my b.NET demo df, which is my orchestration function name. So as a client application, I will be eating this function. So basically when I run this function, I'm going to get an endpoint through which I can trigger this, which is internally going to trigger or start my orchestration, which is called b.NET demo durable function. So if you see, it is going to call this function b.NET demo durable function. And this is my orchestration function because I know because it is having an orchestration trigger attribute. And internally what we have is we have got a list of string. And what we also do is we call basically an activity function called b.NET demo durable functions hello. So this is one activity function we see, but if you see there are three different attributes that is passed to it. And all of these functions are called one by one, and then we are adding it to the list of string. Basically, we are adding it back to outputs, and then we are returning back an output to it. So this is a default function that durable function has put to it. So let me go and run this. And while it runs, I will quickly check if in the chat if there are any questions. There is a question on Azure storage cost. No, Azure storage cost, we as a developer, we need not worry about it, right? So it is not going to cost you much. It is going to be literally trivial. So you will not even able to see that the difference in the cost that is going to bring to us. For every new request, new object needs to be created by the Azure. Correct. So based on the consumption premium plan, right? It is no different than the Azure functions that we have. It is still going to follow that. So internally we have something called Azure scale controller, right? So it is going to kind of determine the scale that our functions is getting the call. And based on that, it is going to spin up the new instance if it is needed, or it is going to bring down the instance if it is not required. So it is all the same. So there is no difference. It is just an extension on top of Azure function, I would say. So if you see, it is kind of a run the function, and we could see a local HTTP endpoint here. So the next thing is we have to call this endpoint, right? So let's do that. So if you see, I'm using an extension called REST client in VS Code, which is going to kind of help us calling the HTTP endpoints right from the VS Code. We don't need something like Postman or curl command to call the HTTP request. I will show you how it works. So you just have to type get, and if you see, it is already providing me an IntelliSense to send this request. So I'm going to send this request to this endpoint. And the right side, if you see, it is going to let me show the output. So this is the output that we have called using the client function, right? So if you see, I was saying, right, it is going to just let us know the status. You cannot expect the output directly from this, and it is going to give me an endpoint location. That is where my output of my orchestration function would be there. And it is also going to give me four other endpoints, like what is the status, if your durable function is running for a long time, what is the status of that. And if I have to post some event to my durable function while it is running, we can use that. And if I have to terminate, I can terminate my durable function using this. And internally, it is going to create some Azure storage, right? If you want to delete all that, what got deleted, you can always go and purge the data that it has got in the storage account. So this is again the get request. So we'll go and do a get request here. So this is output of my durable function. So we called three activity. Basically, one activity function was there in the default one, but internally it was getting called thrice. If you could see here. So we are calling three times outputs. We are calling one function three times, passing three different attributes, which is called Tokyo, Seattle, and London. We are adding it to a list of string, and we are just showing it as an output. And that is exactly what you see here. So this is a simple workflow, right, which we have created using durable functions. So I've also got, but the sample that we have taken is booking hotel and booking the flight ticket, right? And let me quickly check what's the time now. Okay. Okay, I will also show that demo quickly. So I have already done the coding and I've got it ready. So let me go and explain this part also, and then we can quickly go back to the presentation. So again, let me explain the solution before we kind of go and explore the code. So let me close all this. So I've already created something called durable functions, fan out and fan in. So fan out and fan in, if you remember, this is one of the pattern that we saw. And in my durable functions in our sample workflow, to repeat the workflow, right? We will get an input to book a vacation. We have to book an hotel. We have to book a flight ticket also, and we also have to compute the total. So, but booking hotel and booking flight ticket, I can do it in parallel, right? I don't have to do it in sequence. So, and at the end, I also want to compute the total. So this kind of comes in a pattern called fan out and fan in. So I've just named that folder like that to quickly help us understand. So if you see client starter function we need, and yeah, this is the function name is called trigger the book vacation. This is called client starter function again because it has got a durable client as an attribute. And in this durable client, I'm going to start a new orchestrator function called book vacation. So what is different in the sample that we saw just now and in this is we are getting an input now. So I want to pass an input. Say I want to post to this request, passing my hotel name, passing the place where I want to go, and passing the flight where I want to book. So if this is a normal workflow that we will all have, right? I want to pass a unique POCO class as an input to my orchestrator function. So I can do that. So this is how we do that. Whenever I call post endpoint, I can post this as a body, and it is automatically going to get deserialized as this object, and that can be passed as an input to orchestrator function as my second object. If you see here, book vacation is my orchestrator function, and vacation info is my argument that I want to pass to it. And I am starting my orchestrator function and returning the output. This is 4 simple lines for client function. Client function is usually it's not going to extend beyond these many lines, right? And I have got my orchestrator function. So book vacation orchestrator, and this name should be like book vacation. So book vacation is my orchestrator function, and it is receiving the input, and it is calling my activity functions in parallel. Activity function name is book hotel, book flight ticket. And again, those I have to pass input, right? I have to pass the hotel name, and I have to pass through which airlines I want to book a flight ticket. So I'm going to call these two activities in parallel. So it is going to execute, and it is going to come back waiting for all the activity functions. So when so if you see, this is a normal task library that is available in C#, right? So task.whenAll, I am going to give this. It is going to run all this in parallel. I'm going to wait if all my activity is completed. I'm going to trigger another activity function called compute total expense by passing the result of this two activity functions that has just happened. So basically in my example, I've got three activity function, book hotel, book flight ticket, compute total expense. These two are happening in parallel. I am waiting for all for its output to complete. And then I'm calling a third activity function called total expense, passing the result of that. So there is a folder called activity function. So three activity function is there. Let me go on book hotel. So hotel is a activity function because it has got a trigger called activity trigger, and it is going to take an input like hotel name, and it is going to do some activity. But for samples, for example, I've just returning some number. Similar example for book flight. So book flight is also going to take my vacation info, and it is going to pass some result. Compute expenses again another activity function, which is going to take expenses. What is the total expenses that I have incurred so far? It is just going to do an addition of book hotel and book flight and getting me the result for that. Right. We will go and run this quickly so that we will see how it works. And I've already added the REST helper HTTP endpoint so that I don't have to call that again. So if you see how am I going to pass an input, right? So we have post and get endpoints by default from the client function. So since I'm going to pass an object here, I'm using the post and I'm passing my body. So this is a input that I can pass, like I want to travel to Singapore and I want to book hotel called Ayat, and AirAsia is a flight name. So it is going to run. It has already given me an endpoint. So it does. Let me go and post this request. So what has happened is it has kind of given me what is the endpoint where I can go back and check if my orchestration function is completed, and if it is completed, whether it has run successfully and all that stuff, right? So I'm going to go and send a request to that. So yes, so if you see the input I have passed has come, and output, if you see the total expense I have incurred is something like 17,000, and this is nothing but the output that I've done from book flight, which is 10,000 plus book hotel, which is again 7,000. Right. So this is a sample example for fan out and fan in, and it is very simple, right? If you see the orchestration function, this is absolutely a C# code that we see here, right? Let me close the other one. There is nothing internally that we need to maintain. There is no extra computation integration points that we need in Azure, like a blob storage or something, or a Cosmos DB that we initially saw in our first slide, right? So this is all maintained through one unit. All of whatever that we saw in the background is all maintained by the orchestrator function. As a developer, all I need to remember is I have to just call my activity functions either in parallel, or if you have to wait, you can wait and do that. And we also have a way to kind of orchestrate across multiple functions. And if you see the code that we usually write in orchestration function is just to maintain the order in which these activity functions are called. There is no business logic here, and all my business logic gets into each individual activity functions. And each of these entire unit is called one unit, and this is as a one unit we deploy into Azure, and we get one endpoint as an output, which is from the client function through which we can trigger this orchestration, right? And what we also saw some examples, right? What if something errored out? If I'm not able to book a flight ticket, and if something happens, right? We can definitely go back and use try catch statements here. And I can always go back and handle if something is happening, I can go back and handle whatever my exception happens, right? We can go back and do that. And yeah, try catch is good, but what if so we all talking about activity functions, right? And these function book hotel, book flight ticket, it is going to be deployed in Azure, and it is in a distributed system, meaning book hotel can be in some virtual machine in Azure, and book flight ticket can be in, totally in a different virtual machine. But it is all across maintained. It is all the context is all maintained by the orchestration function, right? And what happens if for some reason if you want to retry, like a book flight ticket is taking a little more time than what is expected, but I want to retry, right? So all that is also available. So you can go and do something like, so there is a retry options which is available as part of the Azure durable function. So you can always go back and uh, So you can always go back and give and retry options. Like if I want to retry some activity functions, say for 2-3 times, if my activity function is not responding back in say some amount of time, I want to retry that flow. So all that is also available. So whenever you have to use retry functions, we also have to change this to something like call activity with the retry async. You can pass that, and you also have to pass the options where you want to use that. So the first one is the function name, the second one is the retry options, and the third one is the object. So I will go and pass this retry options. Yeah. So what this is going to do is, if compute total expense, if it is failing for the first time for some reason, based on the parameters, based on the settings that I have given in my retry options, it is going to kind of try it so much of amount of time. Right. Let me go back to the demo. So we saw function chaining, we saw fan out and fan in. We also saw Azure storage emulator. And let me see if I have some time so we can go and discuss. So basically, I also want to also want to see Azure durable function, how it works, but I think we are running short of time. But quickly, if I have to give you it at the background, it kind of uses something called event sourcing, right? If you think of this orchestration function is running in Azure, so there is a really there is a way that we need to know whether my activity function F1 is completed, or whether my function orchestration function is completed. All that has to be maintained by the Azure, right? So this is how it works. So orchestration function is called. So whenever it called, it is going to put an entry in the storage table, sorry, in the history table, like my orchestration function has started. Basically, every instance of my orchestration function is going to get something like an instance ID. So this slide, right? This is something for us to understand. You will not even realize when you are working from the developer point of view. You don't even have to kind of think about it, like how it all works at the background. But it is something good for us to know, because if you have to write unit testing and if you have to understand while debugging how it all works, this will help you to understand that. So whenever my function is getting called, I'm going to put in my history table. Okay, I have started my orchestration. This is my instance started. And we call an activity function. So if you see line number 6, my activity function F1 is called. And then in my history table, I'm going to mark activity function F1 is scheduled. So meaning this line number 6, right? I am going to call an activity function called Tokyo. Called an activity function F1, passing a value called Tokyo. But this may take say 5-10 minutes to complete, right? Until that time, my orchestration function will not be active. It will go back to the background. Meaning you will not be able to, you will not pay for that, right? So you were calling an activity function, which is triggering another Azure function. So that function is now the current active function, right? So this orchestration function will not be active at that point of time. It will go to the background. So this activity function, say it is going to, so that is what it say, orchestration completed, meaning it will go to the background. And say this activity function is completed at its own time. And after it's completed, it's going to trigger back the orchestration function. And when the orchestration function comes back, it is going to start from the beginning, right? There is no way, because if it is a normal C# application, we know that whenever line number await has come, it is going to kind of end it, and where we use the output, it is going to pick from there, right? But since this is a more like an cloud-based orchestrator, right? So it goes back to sleep, and when it comes back, our expectation is usually it has to start from line number 7, which is not the case, right? It has to start from the beginning. And what it does is when the orchestration function F1 is completed, again the orchestration gets start, and it starts to flow from the line number 4, and then it goes and check the history table saying, hey, if have I scheduled the activity function in my first instance, it is going to go start from this point, from the first point. So it comes and tracks it down here. F1 is already scheduled. Okay, I've done that, and that function is already completed. So I'm going to schedule my next function called F2. And then again, after calling F2, the orchestration will go back to sleep until the F2 completes. So the F2 gets completed, and then again the orchestration function triggers, and then it says, have I scheduled a function F1? It will comes and check the history table. Yes, I have scheduled it. And it will come down and it says function F2, have I scheduled it? It comes down and it says F2 is also completed. And then it comes back and returns the output to us. I know I've kind of ran pretty fast in that. Maybe we can have another session where we kind of dwell more in detail about this. Error handling and resiliency we have already seen with try-catch statements. And some of the things that we need to kind of understand while we develop orchestrator function is it is not it must be deterministic, right? So for example, you cannot use something like datetime.now. The reason is the orchestration function in the workflow kind of gets picked up more than one time, right? So it always used to start from the beginning. So for the first time, if I have used something like datetime.now, and assume your activity function is taking some 5 days to sorry from 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and again when orchestration function is started, right, the datetime.now is no more relevant, right? So those kind of statements we should not use, and there are certain flows that Microsoft has provided which can be used as an alternate if at all, if you have to use something like datetime or something which should be used in the orchestrator function. They have provided more features for that, like something like current UTC datetime. And random numbers, static variables, infinite loops are definitely we cannot use in orchestrator function, because this is going to run for a longer time. So we don't want to have something which is non-deterministic like a random numbers. And these are some of the references and links that I've used to kind of prepare this. And we will share you the deck. It should be available. Let me see if there are any questions now. So the question is ideal scenario to think of Azure functions when compared to Web API. Right. So Azure functions. So Web API, again, Web API depends on the Web API is not a serverless way of doing the activity, right? So if you want to think about the cost, and if you want to reduce the cost, and if there is an option, if you can use an workflows, you can definitely go for durable workflows. Whereas Web API is more about maintaining the API endpoints and how do you deploy, and you should probably have something like a VM or Azure App Service to go back and deploy. So these are different options which can solve your business problem. But it depends on the way and the cost that you have to solve that. Can it be used to download a file? Yes, of course, we can use it to download a file. Yeah, you can do that. So there is I don't think the reason for not having to use it. You can pretty much do anything that you want to do. You can download a file, you can convert an image into a thumbnail. All that is definitely possible. Yes, ATM transaction is definitely we can try that. So any workflows, right? So for example, ATM transaction is also a workflow where I come in, I kind of insert my card and my account, I kind of enter my PIN, my accounts get debited, and I can, if I have to do kind of transfer money to somebody, it gets credited, right? So all these are workflows. So any place where you have a workflow, definitely durable function is a good use case where you can make use of all the functions. So how can we maintain the state here? So there are two things. One is durable functions is kind of able to maintain the state for you. There is another entity part of durable function called durable entities that is outside this demo because we have less than 1 hour to even cover this. So there is something called durable entity. So whoever is kind of interested in learning more about maintaining an entity even outside this durable functions can go and explore that. Definitely, this is not a silver bullet, right? So we need to think all our use cases depends on the business problem. So this is definitely not a silver bullet where we can move all our workflows to Azure functions.
Hey,
No,
Amrish, there was also one more question earlier about how the context and the starter are getting injected. Are they injected using dependency injection in
yes,
the
correct. So yeah, so client function, right? So let me. So the client function, it is coming from something called durable client base. So all the injections and the dependency injection is maintained inside that client durable client base, which is something that we can go back and explore. So even if you have to write unit testing, we will go back and mock durable client base, and we will see some examples where this starter is getting injected into that. Correct. So there is a question called master orchestrator functions. It's a very good question, sir. Right. So there is something also called sub orchestrator functions. It is again another type of function by itself. So if I have one orchestrator which has to trigger another orchestrator, for example, it is definitely possible. So in your master orchestrator function, you can go back and create another function called sub orchestrator function, which can have its own workflow. Windows authentication, yes, there are. Let me go back to my code to talk a little bit on the authentication part. So if you all see my client function, right? So it is something similar to what we see in Azure Function. So there are 5 different types of authentication mode available: admin, anonymous, function, system, and user. You can definitely go back and use function or system or user. And when it is deployed into, so running locally doesn't matter, right? Any of the authentic authorization or authentication mode you give, it is going to run. It is going to treat it as an anonymous. But the moment you deploy your Azure Function into Azure portal, and if you have given something like Azure Functions, then it would demand you to pass a code to Azure function to kind of make it work. And if you see, even I can quickly show that here. So yeah, basically when we trigger this endpoint, right, there is a way as a query string we can pass what is the function key that I want to use. So if you have configured your Azure function in Azure portal, you will get a key out of it, and that key can be used to kind of call, and your request will be authenticated that way. Azure Functions, I don't think that directly we can compare with MSMQ, but there are definitely Azure queues available, and even grids available, which we can kind of replace with MSMQ with. Yeah, Azure Service Bus, Azure Event Grid, or Azure Queues is also available. So we can think of something of that sort to replace MSMQ. But there is a lot of interesting workflows possible with Azure Durable Functions, and integrating with queues or Azure Service Bus. We can develop much complex workflows. So send hotel invoice to buyer. Yeah, it is again our business line of application, right? So you can think of creating another activity function to do that, or I would say if you want to kind of update this computed storage into some blob storage, and from there if you want to trigger another Azure function, the possibilities are kind of limitless, right? You can go and develop your own workflows. But to your question, we can, if you want really to be simple, you can go back and add another activity function.
Hey, Amrish.
Yes.
Hey, Amrish. It's Naveen here. Now, in order to call an Azure function, right? You need to pass a token, right? So the key.
Right.
Right. What is the refresh interval of that particular key? We cannot keep unexpired key for a longer time. So as a part of a security review, what we try to do is the key should be expired within X number of seconds. You cannot have the same key sent every time because of the security reason. Because I'm a part of a security review meeting where I say that if the key is a static one which stays over a longer time, then it is not a good scenario to go with it. Like, do we have a mechanism where we can refresh the keys like every X number of seconds in Azure?
So correct. So I'm not sure. So if you have we can definitely integrate with something like Azure Key Vault. So I'm sure you would have got some integrations with that, right? So if key value is expiring, the key itself would not change. So you can use Azure Key Vault, and your client functions can be integrated with Key Vault to pick the value.
No, not that one. So what I meant is like when you make a request for an Azure function from the client end, right? So what I'm telling is like you're supposed to pass a key. How long that key is a valid? Is it valid for only 30 seconds or 60, or can I set that expiry time? I cannot save those things in Azure Key Vault. So
yeah, I've already deployed this function, so I'm just going to go to the place where you can check that.
Yeah. So if I get that key somehow, can I make a call to the Azure functions?
Yes, you can do that. I'm just trying to get into that part.
Like every time when I make a call, so usually like I should not make a call with the same key. Is there a mechanism where a security mechanism where we can refresh the keys? The same key should not be used for every call. So that is a security vulnerability if we are doing it. So that is what I wanted to know. Do we have a mechanism in Azure Functions?
I'm not really sure on that. I can get back to that. But what I have seen during my demo is there is a key vault available. Basically, there is a place where you can generate keys for your Azure function. You can even create your personal keys.
Yeah, that's more over a static one, like where you can do it.
Right.
That is advisable only if you're calling within Azure environments, not outside the Azure environments. So if I'm trying to make from a call from a jQuery or a JavaScript or an Angular, it's not advisable to pass that one. So this is not the one. Like, so if you get across something like that, just let me know.
Sure. I will check on that and I can get back to you on that.
Sure. I think we're already overshot the time. It's 11:20. So if there are any further questions, please keep posting in the messages in the chat. Maybe Amrish also could respond offline. Yeah.
So just a last point. So this is if at all we have a way to create a static key, right? So this is a place where we can create a new system key or a new host key, and we can use it integrated with our Azure function. But there are ways possible, right? We can even provide an abstraction or a layer on top of Azure function, like putting a web service on Azure, running my Azure function as an Azure app service. So once it is all done, that I think there is a better integration that we can do with keys.
Yeah, and also you can create a API management on top of Azure functions, and that would take care of all of your authentication authorization part too.
All right. So for any of the questions that is coming up, I will try to respond in the chat, and I will take a pause here.
All right. Thank you so much, Amrish. That was really very informative. Thank you.
Sure, I will stop presenting. Thank you all, and I will respond to the queries in Teams. Thank you.